How are you feeling about some of the Trump's executive actions?
Love them.
Particularly
specifically on pardons.
Love them.
What about the pardons?
Yeah, I think they were absolutely justified. Again, I don't know all the cases. I certainly don't want to pardon any violent actors, but there was a real miscarriage of justice here. So I'm totally supportive of it.
For violent offenders. Are you comfortable with that?
I haven't seen the details, but I think a lot of those pardons were definitely well deserved.
Listen, this is him. He said he was going to do this during the campaign, and he did exactly what he said he was going to do. Well, if you're asking me if it's what I would have done, what I've said is that the folks who committed violence,
what signal do you think this is?
that he keeps keeping promises.
Senator Thune, are you comfortable with these pardons for January 6th offenders?
Look, as I've said,
Sorry.
as I've said before, we're looking forward to the next 4 years, not the last 4.
What message does this send to police officers who were there that day?
If you're the party of law and order, what about the officers? What about the people that were attacked? The officers that were attacked that day.
You guys have some questions of Biden.
Just to recap, that was Senator Ron Johnson, mostly supportive of pardons. Senator Josh Hawley saying he wouldn't have pardoned rioters who committed violent acts, and Senate Majority Leader John Thune deflecting questions from reporters. Compare that to other GOP senators yesterday who spoke out against the pardons.
People who committed violent crimes on January 6th of 2021 should not be pardoned. And I think this is a terrible day for our Justice Department.
It's wrong to assault anybody, but certainly to assault an officer. And I'm a big back to blue guy.
I'm disappointed to see that, and I do hear the message that was sent to these great men and women that stood by us.
Am I concerned about it? I mean, it's not ideal, but I'm not overly concerned about it either. I think that the gift is that it's all behind us now. We can stop talking about it.
What I'm trying to do is figure out there are some commutations. To me, I just can't agree. I'm about to file 2 bills that will increase the penalties up to and including the death penalty for the murder of a police officer, and increasing the penalties and creating federal crimes for assaulting a police officer. That should give you everything you need to know about my position. Look, it was surprising to me that it was a blanket pardon. Now I'm going through the details.
And former Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell told Semaphore yesterday, quote, "No one should excuse violence, and particularly violence against police officers." So, Jonathan Lemire, I mean, obviously in your book you covered the big lie and all that transpired. These pardons seem to be, in some ways you could argue, the will of the people. 2025. Trump campaigned on this. This is no surprise. Nobody should be shocked. If anyone's shocked, they were not listening. Having said that, there's some differences here. You heard, I think it was Senator John Thune saying, look at Biden's pardons or something. So Biden did pardon his family, and that is a legitimate conversation to have. I think that's the gray area. Some would argue that sets up a really bad precedent. You can definitely argue there is a lot of criticism you could put on those actions, or you could also see the world, perhaps how they were looking at what was coming at them. That's one conversation. But the other one is about assaulting police officers. The other one is about committing acts of violence against our Capitol, the people who work there, our vice president, our Speaker of the House, assaulting cops, video of it. And there's a clear difference. Joe Biden, to respond to Senator Thune, he pardoned the people who defended the Capitol. And Donald Trump pardoned the people who assaulted the Capitol and the people in it. And there's a big difference there. And I don't know if this is what people wanted, but this is the will of the people.
Yeah, that couldn't be
the outcome.
That couldn't be a starker contrast there between who President Biden pardoned, those who defended the Capitol, and those who investigated the attacks, versus President Trump, who is now pardoned those who committed these attacks. January 6th was, of course, the culmination of the big lie. The big lie fueled this violence. And what we got from President Trump this week with these blanket pardons sort of closes the book, if you will, on a Republican effort for 4 years to completely whitewash and downplay what happened that day. And we're going to keep showing the video, but Republicans have been trying to turn the page as quickly as possible since then, with very few exceptions. We did see, some muted criticism from Republicans, some sharper language from others. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Senator Cassidy. We just heard from Senator Tillis. There were some Republicans who made clear this isn't what they would have done. At the very least, they wouldn't have agreed to pardons for those who committed violent offenses against police officers. And others, as we heard from the new majority leader, tried to sort of play whataboutism with the pardons from President Biden. And as Mika said, those for his family, that's deserving of a separate conversation. Those for the January 6th Select Committee and the police officers involved, that's very different. And what we don't know now is whether this will fuel any further resistance from Republicans. And Willie, I think the safe bet is no. Yes, this is how it always goes. You'll have certain senators, who, because of often electoral concerns, and yes, sometimes out of principle, will criticize Donald Trump, but the vast majority will either simply full-throated endorse it or turn a blind eye to it.
Yeah, and we heard many of them, including the majority leader later yesterday, talking about we're going to get through all of Donald Trump's nominees. They will all be confirmed. We'll stay here all night. We'll stay here all weekend, signaling again that we are with Donald Trump on whatever he asks us to do. And Ali Vitale, you cover these men and women every day in Congress. Majority Leader John Thune, I thought, was very revealing, a guy who's very well respected, well liked, a decent man, who just answered the very easy question, should people who beat up cops be released from prison? He said, would you ask Biden the same question about pardons? It feels like Donald Trump gave these Republicans a pretty easy test right out of the gate. Are you able to say, by the way, you were the victims of this attack on January 6th in many ways. You were inside the Capitol. Are you able to say that people who beat up cops viciously in front of cameras, the whole world watched it happen, should they be released from prison? And by and large, with the exceptions we saw there, most of them kind of are looking the other way because they don't want to cross Trump in these early days.
I think that's exactly right. The way that Senator Thune answered that question, I think, tells us a lot about where the Senate Republican Conference is writ large, and they are just trying to put January 6th in the rear view, let Trump basically tie up the loose ends by commuting and pardoning all of these rioters, and they're just trying to move on to the agenda of taxes and immigrations. I don't think it will be that easy, because you still have 5 to 7, if we're being generous, counting Republican senators that rebuked this move. You've still got a handful of them who are willing to say that this flies in the face of being the party of law and order and backing the blue. But again, there are so many litmus tests that are being put out in the early days of this administration. January 6th is one of them. The confirmation battles for controversial nominees are another. We saw the way that Pete Hegseth was able to be pushed out of committee in favorable fashion because all Republicans there voted him out. Of course, we'll see whether his confirmation hearing on the full floor changes anything. If there are Republicans that are still reluctant or reticent about the job that he could do leading the Pentagon, that's certainly something that I'm looking for. But I think it really tells us something about the ways that Trump was able to remake Congress in his image, and now he's bearing the fruits of that.
Caddy K, the Wall Street Journal editorial board, has a piece this morning titled "Trump Pardons the January 6 Cop Beaters." This is the Wall Street Journal editorial board writing, quote, Republicans are busy denouncing President Biden's preemptive pardons for his family and political allies, and deservedly so. But then it's a shame you don't hear many, if any, ruining President Trump's proclamation to pardon unconditionally nearly all the people who rioted at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. This includes those convicted of bludgeoning, chemical spraying, and electroshocking police to try to keep Mr. Trump in power. Now he's springing them from prison. This is a rotten message from a president about political violence done on his behalf, and it's a bait and switch. Out of roughly 1,600 cases filed by the feds, more than a third included accusations of assaulting, resisting, or impeding law enforcement. Of the 1,100 sentences handed down this year, more than a third did not involve prison time. The rioters who did get jail often were charged with brutal violence. What happened that day is a stain on Mr. Trump's legacy. By setting free the cop beaters, the president adds another. So you have this morning, 2 days into his administration, Caddy,